Hey guys, we have Mage Class Wars Finals for July 2015. Just setting up my resistances here. I'm showing all of this stuff just because I got level 9s finally. And so I put 5 dark level 9s and 5 wind level 9s in at first. I ended up changing that to 6 level 9 darks and just 4 of the level 9 wind. But I show each of my changes for the resistances. A really big wind and dark res. It's just worked out really awesome. I felt like this was just sort of the approach that Morden took when he was winning, Class Wars after Class Wars, which he's still doing, but in a different section. And so yeah, the big resistances are just so helpful. There I show my BR briefly. It said 3.15 million BR, but that's not actually accurate. I meant to show my BR with my U-Demon on, which if I put my U-Demon on and then equipped a Sylph onto my U-Demon, I'd be sitting around 3.4 million BR, and I showed that at the end of the video, but I got it wrong at the beginning of it. But otherwise, I decided to drop the U-Demon. I lost a couple of fights to Chili Mac in the prelims on damage dealt, and one of the things that I did in Titan War with my team was drop some of the kids, and so it helped the kids take a lot of damage, and so in the tiebreakers we were actually winning when we didn't have the U-Demons along. So I kind of wanted to take that approach just in case. I knew that my resistances were really big and that I had an advantage in the vast majority of these fights, but just in case, I didn't want to chance it. I didn't want to overthink it, so decided to just go ahead and drop the kid, and I think it worked out just fine. So the first fight was against Shady, and he brings a water pet, which I was really happy to see. It ends up being a 5-element Class Wars final, so I see 5 different elements against my opponents. So, I mean, he's at a huge disadvantage here. One, I think, just on BR, and then, I have a ton of reduced res, so even though he has a water pet and I don't have any water resistance crystals on, I'm still going to be just dealing too much damage for him to deal with. On the other hand, Kavla has much more similar stats to mine. Mine are probably a little bit better than hers, but nothing as outrageous. But and she also has a decent chunk of dark resistance as well. It looks like her kid is not that strong, or at least is not dealing well with my magical attack. So I'm not sure there. She has a Medusa on her U-Demon, and I'm not sure that's the best choice for a magical U-Demon. Magical U-Demons inherit, well, just U-Demons in general inherit their Sylph stats. So if you give a physical Sylph to a magical U-Demon, they're not going to be getting their main attack stat as much as they could. So usually I leave, Hercules or Athena on my U-Demon, which is a battle oracle. Anyway, we get into Sylph mode, and I could just tell that her dark resistance was decent. That Death Harvest didn't do much to her Sylph troops. Likewise, her Delphics are not, or her AoEs aren't doing that much to my Sylph troops. So I knew this could potentially be a close fight, and so if at all possible, I wanted to win decisively in all of my fights and not let things go to timer. Even though I did drop the U-Demon, I just, everybody would prefer to kill someone over having to wait for Wartune to decide, who wins based on damage dealt. Here I'm at a big advantage because I have 2 Medusa troops still going, and she only has 1. So that means that I have 2 troops that are using steel and she only has 1. So even though I got out of Sylph mode later, I can actually get back in sooner. So I don't really know why Heal Rune was necessary there. Probably could have just attacked again and gone into Sylph mode. But either way, the Medusas are really doing their job. It's been a while since I've played 2 wind pets as my troops. I've been bringing Triton a lot in the past few months. But because my resistance is so high, I decided that I wanted to kind of fall back on, using my resistances as my main defense, my main way to defend myself against my opponents, and then get kind of aggressive with my Sylph troops. So Medusas do a lot of awakening steals. I can, shorten my opponent's Sylph turns and or just keep them out of Sylph mode, which was, you know, the main benefit here, because you deal so much more damage against players when they're not in Sylph mode. I don't have all those passives and things. So I managed to kill Kavla just in time. I'm still not amongst the top 5 in the rankings. That was only the second fight, and that's because my BR drops so much without the U demon. Here's Arlie, who I was told had a ton of dark resistance, but then it turned out that she didn't. So she might have lost her dimensions. You know, the dimensions die really quickly, but my friend was saying that she had a bunch of experts, so I don't know if she lost them or what happened, but she was taking quite a bit of damage. If I feel like my opponent doesn't have a Chaos Rune, which it's not beyond Arlie to have a Chaos Rune, then I'll usually Centauria. Sometimes if I feel like I'm gonna get chaosed anyway, then I'll either leave it until I'm very close to going into Sylph mode, or just not even bother. I wanted to have a very similar strategy against all my opponents. Mostly, I mean, not because it's a good thing, because actually it can be kind of predictable if you play that way, but mostly because I wanted to have a sort of rhythm to my play. I wanted to, you know, execute a strategy that I thought was a good one and do it over and over and over again. So I didn't, you know, maybe some adjustments here and there, but in general, the main things I was focusing on as far as the actual, you know, battle was going. I think Class Wars is like 90% preparation and then like 10% execution. So at least on the execution part of things, I really wanted to be the person leading the battle, and so, or leading the pace of the battle. So I wanted to be the first one going to Sylph mode, and almost everybody, to the T, I was actually kind of amazed that everybody had the same reaction, as I was really pushing to Sylph first, and no matter what, everybody followed me really quickly, and so they were definitely scared maybe of the 2 Medusas of being stuck outside of Sylph mode, and so that's understandable, but it really worked out well how everybody pretty much followed me into Sylph mode very quickly, and so that means that I was more in control of the battle than most of my opponents. I think there are only a couple maybe that made it into Sylph mode before I did. And previously, I kind of had the approach of, oh, I'll just let my opponent Sylph first. You know, I want to be able to awaken and deal a little bit of damage to their Sylph troops because of that. But this time around, I just wanted to feel a little bit more under control, and I felt like Sylphing first was the way to go about that. Also, in the transition before my fight with Chili, I switched to having more dark resistance, which is helpful. You know, it looks like Chili didn't end up, actually his dark resistance either dropped from prelims, or just the gap between our resistances is so much more noticeable now that I have level 9 crystals. But you can see I'm dealing a lot of damage to his troops between Death Harvest and my Delphic, and his just aren't dealing nearly as much to me. My reduced res is also really, really nice, so my guess is he probably tops, you know, around 1200 dark resistance here. 1200, 1300, somewhere around there. And once the steals do their magic, he's out of Sylph mode, and I still have some wiggle room to kill him with the dark skills. So now I'm finally in the top 3, Lala, Ray, and myself all with 4 wins. And it really stays a tight race, which was good for me. It keeps me really focused and motivated to win when everybody else is doing well too. Here's one of the most decisive fights. It's against Ray, and I knew it would be. I had a very good feel for how big her dark resistance was in prelims, and I felt like prelims could have gone either direction with her. Really, you know, I won on damage dealt in the preliminaries, but you know, I wasn't able to really tell that I was dealing more damage than she was, and so here, you know, I was very prepared to have a lot of wind resistance. I did change to have more dark, well, even out the dark and the wind resistance, but I'm still over 1800 wind resistance here. I suspect her dark resistance is still very good, but maybe not quite that high. Or if it is that high, you know, I think I still have more defense than Ray does. She has more attack than I do, though. I think she has some, like, big Red Holy Forge or something on her weapon, because I think of the mages she has the highest attack stat still. And her U-Demon is still up, so you know, when we go to timer or something like that, that means, you know, I just got a Death Harvest and a Delphic on her U-Demon. So that's quite a bit of damage that the Ute is taking, that you know, I don't have a U-Demon that's, you know, taking that kind of AoE damage from her Wind Sylph. So that is a plus. She's just in trouble here. You know, I was definitely going for the kill, but her dark resistance is really really big. But you know, I have both of my Sylph troops still up, so that's a huge factor. You know, a bad sign definitely for damage dealt is, you know, whether or not your opponent still has their Sylph troops. If you can't get through the Sylph troops, you're probably not going to win on damage dealt. I was trying to keep her out of Sylph mode and I thought it was going well, but I think she actually makes it back in. All sorts of heals. Centauria. I don't have anything to deal with blocking those. You know, in prelims I brought an Amnesia, but I didn't really like using it. Alright, I think actually the steals do keep her out of Sylph mode. Or not? Just barely? Oh, she does make it in. Okay. She has that Centauria, so it's ticking for quite a bit of damage. There I go with a Guardian Rune, and I probably should have just attacked. And maybe just tried to sneak in an attack and kill her, but I didn't quite. But I did win on damage dealt, so that's good enough. And so Ray drops down to 3rd, and she's tied with Chili Mac and Kavla, and then Lala and I are left undefeated at this point. Here's DHR, who, you know, he used to use a fire pet all the time, so I always kind of in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, is he finally gonna go back to a fire pet? But it looks like he's building up his Hecate so much that it doesn't really matter. I get the feeling that he wasn't, I think he was just AFK the entire time. I don't think he won any fights, so I think he was just in the tournament, kind of there for show, which I think is fine. I think a lot of people, if they don't feel like they're competitive in Warlords Hall, won't try that hard, or they'll at least not try to spoil their own wagers. So that's one thing. But he's just chilling, so I just try and make it go quickly and not waste time. So here's one of my resistance changes. Switch it up just a little bit to put some fire resin. I heard that Ariel had a fire pet, and since I already fought Ray and I couldn't do anything after my fight with Ray, because the amount of time between the fights was so little, I decided to drop a little bit of my wind resistance. I knew that Solara potentially still had a wind pet, but I felt like from the results that he was having with other players that his wind resistance was probably, his dark resistance was probably not that great, and so I felt like I didn't need my wind resistance to be as outrageously high. So I started, you know, trying to fill in a little bit of fire resistance there. Here's one of my personal favorites, Smartass. I don't think she's, you know, making a very competitive run of it. If she really wanted to, she could, you know, get a lot more wins just by stacking a ton of resistances, which I think she's perfectly capable of, but that she didn't do this time around. So if she's not pushing resistances, then just by default, her, you know, just by BR and stuff, she's at a huge disadvantage. That said, I still won't go easy on her. I take the same strategy I do with everybody else, and I'm trying to Sylph first and win. So here, Lala finally takes a loss. I suspect it was against Ray, and even though I heard and, you know, eventually find out that Lala's dark resistance is really strong, I suspected that her resistance against other players was not as good, so she's probably performing really well against all the dark users, which is the majority of the players, but might have lost to maybe, I don't know quite who, but probably Ray. Maybe she didn't have wind resistance, or possibly somebody with a fire or a light pet. He's euphoric, and he has another dark pet. I think that's pretty standard, but his Sylph troops are not. He brings an Athena and a Triton, which I think is an interesting combo. You know, not bringing a Medusa is really pretty dangerous to me, especially in finals when you're going to see more multiple Medusas. You know, potentially like Ray or Solara, who often bring their wind pet as their main, and then another wind pet as their troop, and then one Triton. So that's 2 steals. Or somebody like myself who brings 2 Medusas and their dark pet. So when you're up against somebody with 2 more steals than you do, it gets really, really dangerous on the awakening point side of things. That said, Euphoric's just at a BR and a resistance disadvantage here. Things staying the same. A really tight race for second there. 4 people with 7 wins, and there might even be another one, but I think it's just those 4. Here's Gruntar, and I fought him in prelims, and his dark resistance was not so hot, and I don't think he's cashing or at least pushing for a win lately. You know, Gruntar has had quite a few victories in class wars, and he has nothing to prove really. But at least right now, I don't think he's in a super competitive mode for class wars. Another one with an Athena troop, or wait, is that his? Oh no, okay, I was looking at it wrong. That's actually, the Athena is his U-Demon Sylph. So he has a water pet that's hiding back there. So the one thing that I was worried about with not having a Triton with me is not having the Snowflake, the shield that's basically like a Knight's Agoran shield, which is really, really nice, and would decrease the amount of damage that I take. And so I was a little bit worried about not having one of those, but again, just kind of resting on the resistances. And he's taking a lot of damage. Delphic wiping him out. So still in the lead. Lala at this point still doing very well. Chili takes another loss. I don't know against whom. Here's Ariel, and she has a fire pet, so I was a little bit concerned. I only have 1 fire crystal on at the moment, but hopefully, I was just figuring that I could get by on reduce res and a BR advantage. Do get a stun on her because the kids are still there, and usually I only get 1 stun off at the beginning, and I don't bother trying to get another until possibly we're both out of Sylph mode. I end up not getting a ton of stuns. I probably maybe 1 out of every 3 people I get one of those stuns at the beginning. A lot of players are stacking up a lot of influence, so pushing for a lot of beads of influence through the various exchanges and different stuff. Now with the new patch, it's much easier to get them from like Sacrifice and other places, so it's getting easier to get those beads, which is a good thing because these stuns are just crazy. So when I go into Sylph mode, especially if I know I'm for sure that I'm the one that's going to attack first, I go with Devil's Gaze. Devil's Gaze reduces the amount of healing that they take, so if they try and use a Devour Soul or something like that, they won't get as much healing back. I also don't want to use one of my AoEs while they're still awakening, because then it won't hit their Sylph troops. So I want to use something single target before I use my AoEs. So here I changed to get some higher quality light resistance, and I changed back to some better wind resistance. I thought after facing Ariel I wouldn't see any more fire pets, but that turns out not to be the case. But just in case I wanted a little bit of better light resistance, exactly for this opponent who's Asher. I knew he was going to bring this light pet, but even so, there's only so much I could prepare for it. I was hoping to see Asher first fight, completely. He just wanted to get his light pet over with and be able to take the crystals off. But I actually get her much later in the tournament, and so I had to leave the light crystals on for a bit. Asher has relatively similar stats to myself, you know, not quite as beefed up. You know, I put on a lot of temporary mounts and stuff, so I suspect that I have some BR out of nowhere that, you know, that other people didn't bother with. But even so, Asher can stay very competitive with me if he has the resistance for it, which at the moment he doesn't really, but I was still worried about how much damage his light pack could deal, so I didn't want to go in completely naked of crystals against Asher. He's placed well over what his BR would normally perform, just because he uses this light pet, and he uses it pretty smartly. Smartly, even a word, intelligently. And so anyway, so I mean, of course you can notice the resistance difference because your Sylph troops inherit your resistances. So I'm taking a ton of damage from his light pet to my Sylph troops, but he's also taking a lot of damage from me. So just managing, but I think definitely one of the players that deals the most damage against me, because, you know, the Dark and Wind pets really don't manage that well. So after finally seeing Asher and getting that fight over with, I was really relieved. I took out my light resistance and finally put in a full set of fire resistance, which I was quite pleased about. And it turns out to be a really good thing. I'm not quite sure. Do I get Solara here? He might be the fight after this. Oh no, so here's Lala, which of course I knew would be another very decisive fight. Lala was clearly doing well that night, especially at the beginning. She seemed to be really cleaning house, and so I didn't want to you know, take her lightly at all. She does get a stun on me at the beginning. I am surprised I didn't get stunned at the beginning as much as I did, because I don't have a U-Demon. I don't have somebody who has, you know, to split the chance of getting hit by that Ice Bolt. So I thought I would be eating some more stuns, but I guess the influence is holding up or something like that. So into Sylph mode, and she follows. And it's literally like every single fight. I'm trying to think if there's a single fight where somebody just like dawdles and doesn't go into Sylph mode right after I do. And I don't think there is one. Do a Devour Soul because I saw that Chaos and wanted to switch it up a little bit. Sometimes if you're Chaosed, even though you won't hit your own Sylph troops, sometimes it misses the troops or the player if there's multiple on the other side. So I'm a little funky there. Lately the Guardian rune has been bugged. I think I fought Chili earlier in the day, and I hit my Guardian rune, and it didn't buff me, so I was a little bit scared about using my Guardian rune as well. It didn't seem to act up at all during class wars, which I was really happy about, but it did earlier today in Narendera Remains, so I'm not really sure what's going on there, but it's clearly a bug. So out of Sylph mode, you know, her Medusa seems to make it so that I can't stay in Sylph mode for a long period of time. And then she stuns one of my Medusa, so I'm not getting as many steals as I normally would, or else I don't think that one Goddess of Prosperity would be as much of an issue as I thought it would be. So Lala actually gets into Sylph mode just fine. My Medusas don't keep her out of there like some of my other opponents. With that said, I'm still at a huge advantage because I have so much dark resistance, and it's very hard to get through the Sylph troops that way. Gets a Guardian rune on, and I see the Delphic, so I get mine on too. Hoping to get a Delphic on her without, once she gets the, once her Guardian rune runs out. But not sure because the timer is cutting it really close. So there's the Delphic. So I'm very close to killing her, but not quite. Timer runs out, but I pretty decisively dealt more damage there, so I take the win. And so Lala and Kevlar are now tied for third, or at least tied at 10 wins, and then Lala's ahead by BR. And I'm still undefeated, and Ray has only lost to me, clearly. Here's Solara, and he brings a fire pet. I knew Solara could possibly do this. I wasn't really sure what was in his head. I talked to him pretty often, but I hadn't, within like the couple of days leading up to Class Wars finals, so I wasn't sure, kind of where he was at with resistances or dimensions or whatever. So I knew there was some potential for bringing the fire pet. He's done it previously in Class Wars, but I could have sworn he was going to bring wind, and so I was more concerned about that. I do have fire crystals on now, so I am glad that I fought Asher before I fought Solara, because Solara is definitely the most threatening of the fire pets that I've seen here. So he's one of 3 fire pets: Ariel, Solara, and then Tyre or Tyr. Looks like Tyre is the person I fight after this, and he also has a fire pet. But this fire pet's just cleaning house with the troops, but because it doesn't have a really good AoE, it's sort of hard to make sure that you kill the troops. So his dark resistance just isn't good enough. I think this would be very, very threatening if he had, 1500 dark resistance or something like that. But as he is right now, it's not going to really cut it. Victory. Alright, so 2 more fights to go. 13 wins. Here's Fear. So I thought Solara was second to last, but he was actually third to last. So 1 more dark pet to go then. And Fear congratulating me. I think it's at least clear that I'm one of the favorites. Even so, I knew that anything could be thrown at me tonight. I was concerned about non-dark and wind pets because I was really not, at least dimension-wise, prepared for any of them. So I actually was prepared for a big surprise, but not as many surprises as I saw. I saw a water pet out of Shady, a bunch of fire pets, and then, well, okay, I kind of predicted the light one. I knew about that, but even so, I was surprised how many people went off path and didn't use their dark pets. Pretty much everybody you've seen tonight, their main pet is actually a dark pet. And so if they're not using a dark pet, they're using something that is not, their primary self, not the self that they've built up the most. With the exception of Solara, who still didn't use his main pet, which is a wind one. But oh, and Ray's always brings wind. One of these days, Ray is just gonna break out like her Hercules or something at Class Wars and surprise everybody, and it's gonna be really, really funny. I'm waiting for the month that it happens, but I don't think I think in 26 Class Wars, this is the 26th, that Ray has ever brought anything but a wind pet, which is just amazing in its own right. Actually, not 26 Class Wars, because Class Wars didn't have sylphs at the beginning. But for as long as there have been sylphs, Ray, I'm pretty sure, has brought a wind one, even including the Pan days. So it's pretty amazing. Here's the main new face out of the people in in Warlords Hall. I think this might be his first time in Warlords Hall, maybe, but definitely the newcomer out of the bunch. Kong 8 player, which the numbering always kind of confuses me, because like Kong 15 is actually like a relatively young server out of my cross server section, but any of the main ones like Kabam, Wartune.com, R2 Games, anything like that, server 15 is going to be a much older server. So when I see Kong 8, I don't know if that's like an older server, and so he's just somebody who's like finally cashed a lot more, or if he's a younger server and just kind of making his way up and rushing to the top. So with that victory, I end up undefeated, so 15-0, and that's what it would take for me to win. If I had taken any losses, Ray probably would have tied me for 14 wins and beaten me on BR. So I had to win everything in order to win Class Wars, which I guess is the way it's supposed to be, right? My guild very sweet and congratulating me on my server. I collect my rewards, and that gives me the sorcerer title, which is not given nearly as much as I thought it did. It gives 670 HP, I think. And I also got the nether lichen, which lasts 20 days when you get first place. I've had this before for getting second and third, but not for as long as I do for winning, of course. And so that's very nice. The sorcerer title is actually really obnoxious in chat, but my guild is, or especially some of my closer friends, are insisting that I leave it on, so we'll see how long I last keeping that on. I'm not a big fan of keeping titles on, but I guess this is the biggest one I've gotten, so I should leave it on at least for a little while. So I'll go trot around in my nether lichen. I'm still at 1.25 million BR, so I just wanted to show what it would be if I had kept my U-Demon on. So just with the U-Demon, it's 3.16 million, but more realistically, I have to have a Sylph follow him, and so once I follow or have Athena follow my U-Demon, I'm up to 3.4 million BR. And so in rankings, that's probably a better way of kind of measuring myself up with the other players. So the resistances just really pay off, and take the win. It's kind of impressive. Usually you won't see this, is that the wins go from 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, and it's not until 7th place where Asher skips down and takes only 8 wins, and then there's things don't start tying until 8th through 10th place, which is not very common. You usually see more people winning certain stuff by BR. But a big congrats to Cypress and Lambeau, who are the winners for the Knights and the Archers, and also congrats to Ray and Kavla. Ray has been in the top 3 a bunch lately, but I think it's been a while since Kavla's been in the top 3. I feel like she's been up there before, but I'm not totally sure. But a big congrats to them anyway. And a big thank you to everybody who's been supporting me through all the videos and stuff. I've had so many people who are so kind and rooting for me, and have been just really, really sweet. And so I'm glad I finally got this win to kind of just validate all of the people's support that I've been getting. And so a big thanks to you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care and have a very good day.